Its size and shape are not much different than my boot. It costs about the same as a good pair, too. Let's drive the 2014 Scion IQ and check the tech. Now, the headline on the Scion IQ is very simple. Small, specifically short. It's about 120 inches long nose to tail, 56 inches shorter than a Civic Coupe. That's tiny. Not quite short enough to park it, perpendicular the way a smart car can, however, because this guy ostensibly has seating for 4. We'll look into that later. Now, I'll admit, when I get in this thing, I feel a little bit like my name should be Bozo and my fuzzy wig should be touching the roof. It's a little bit of a small cabin in here, not super cramped. I mean, it's no Smart 4.2, but definitely small and very tall, and they emphasize that with the design of the console. A lot of the cues in here say upright. Now, we have the optional, what they call the bespoke audio system. Let's run through some of the features of that. That does give you navigation. It's a basic system, but it works well. And what I always look for is, does it have quick response on the touchscreen, at least when you touch the button properly? And it does. It's fairly advanced with a number of different view modes. I still like 2D straight down, to be honest. But getting in and out of things is quick and easy, which is great for low distraction. So kudos for an inexpensive car nav rig. Of course, the system also includes Bluetooth hands-free as well as Bluetooth streaming audio. Pretty good display of media as well. In fact, there are a lot of expensive cars that don't do it this well, which is kind of a shame on them. You pretty much have all the greatest hits of modern media here, AM and FM with HD radio available. I mentioned the Bluetooth streaming with a pretty good handling of meta tags and album art. Your iPod goes in through a USB connector, as any modern car does today. And in spite of this being a car for the youngest buyers, it's got one of the oldest media in there. It still has a CD player, which we're seeing drop away from a lot of vehicles, but this one still has it. You've also got AHA right here, which is going to bring you streaming internet stations, predictive internet radio stations, like Pandora and such. You're also going to bring in the ability to play podcasts, and it's also your social media portal for Facebook and Twitter. Now, beyond the central screen, you don't have a whole lot going on in the instrument panel area. A simple little orange Nissan-like info display on the left. It's LCD, speedometer, a weirdly shaped tach, and that's it. Only transmission on this car is a CVT, a continuously variable gearbox, no paddles or anything like that. This is a very simple, basic car. And simple and basic is the word that comes to mind with these seats as well. I've rarely seen upholstery that looks more like covers you buy at O'Reilly Auto Parts. There's no stitching, there's no detailing, looks like something you slid over it, like a pillowcase. Now back here is where a Scion IQ is quite a bit different than a Smart 4.2. Back here you've got a pretty decent cargo bay and seating area. Here's the seat area folded down. Pull them up, and these very, very basic little seats do give you kind of a church pew or a form school bench. But this is some prostate pinching stuff back here. You're never going to find me in these seats, but if you got some very small friends or children, it'll do in a pinch. You've also got a little smuggler's box back here that passes for a very tiny little hiding storage area. Now, underneath what has to be the world's stubbiest hood, we find one of the world's smallest engines. Not that small, but it's down there. 1.3-liter inline-4, sitting side saddle, driving the front wheels, of course, and hooked up to that CVT, as I mentioned. The numbers are diminutive as well. 94 horsepower, 89 foot-pounds of torque. We don't see double digits around here in those categories very often. However, the weight number goes down with them. Just about 2,100 pounds. I sat next to a guy on a flight last week who weighed more than that. Therefore, the MPG comes out pretty good. 36 city, 37 highway, 37 average. But notice, as small as this car and its engine are, we still don't crack 40 MPG. That's at least psychologically disappointing. Now, the first little frustration of driving this car is I put it in reverse and nothing shows up on the dash. There is no rear view camera, standard or optional in the IQ. Now, driving this car is, let me put it this way, I don't mean it to be a backhanded compliment, but I guess it is, and that is, this is not the worst car I've ever driven. And considering that it's got a very small engine and a CVT and a low price tag, that's actually a victory for Scion. I have driven more expensive cars with more power and more cylinders that actually have worse response, so good on them. On the other hand, something exhilarating about driving an IQ. It doesn't make any very pleasant noises, though they aren't awful. The ride quality's good. These big, ugly-looking seats are actually quite comfortable. I've got to give them that as well. Looking back over your shoulder, you realize how small a car you're driving. It's not quite as pronounced as a Smart 4.2, but you really go, whoa, when you turn around and say, where's the rest of it? You have to get used to that and start to take it as an advantage in parking. And you really can put this thing in some small spots. You've got a sport mode here on the gear selector. It doesn't do a whole lot for the vehicle. It holds RPMs a little higher and seems to increase throttle response. But again, in a gearless gearbox, it doesn't give it any more bite. Now, pricing our little snub-nosed friend is pretty easy. About $16,400 base delivered. The only option to take it more CNET style is $1198 for that so-called bespoke head unit that brings in far more audio options, navigation, that AHA support, and things of that nature. It's certainly worth the money. I wish there was a backup camera available at almost any cost, but there's not, and that frustrates me. You'll logically cross-shop this car against a Fiat 500 or even a Smart 4 too. But don't cross-shop it against a Chevy Sonic, for example. It's got better MPG and it's a full serving of car in about the same price range. You have to value super small urban dimensions for this car to make sense.